So, Judge, what? So you would like me to read the text messages that Lainey sent you that I sent
Yeah,
her, correct?
right. That way I get at least a basic outline because
Oh,
I made
Judge,
some notes as
I
to the
love
various
that idea
subjects.
because that makes everyone's life easy. Oh,
Well,
here we go.
without the hypothetical in front of the public, my comments would make no sense. So
Right.
So what Laney texted me was, I forgot you, blah, blah, blah. Also, he asked me for more information on this so he can research and prepare. Text me in a nutshell what's going on because what you told me was a little vague. So now, hopefully you can hear me and I will read this.
yeah, I can
Word
hear
for
you
word what I
fine.
wrote her. I wrote, it's such a long, convoluted story. Hold on. There you go. It's such a long, convoluted story, but as best I can explain it, here we go. Sent. A friend of ours and his wife got involved with this is all allegedly, with a pretty popular YouTuber out in Minnesota and his wife. They began wife swapping. Send. Then they began doing cocaine in the home of the popular YouTuber. Eventually, our one friend left this crazy situation, but his wife stayed behind. Because she was caught up in all the insanity. See how nice? I didn't call her a judge. This is real life. I'm not making this up. I'm not that good a writer. Well, while the popular law tuber and his actual wife and concubine kept living in denial and looking for legal ways, as you can imagine, because the guy's a lawyer, and I should have pointed out on YouTube, he made millions live streaming court cases of Kyle Rittenhouse and then Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. He kept trying to weasel out of it. Well, it turns out my friend, we'll call him person A, okay, sent me a naked picture that I never asked for. Of the law tuber's wife. Well, the picture was taken willingly of her standing there naked in front of him because they were having sex while she was distracting him, knowingly so that her husband could have sex with his wife. She is not a victim here. They're all in this. They're all fucking acting like idiots. Then I wrote, Laney, isn't this wild? So, of course, the guy, his name, well, they know his name. He's a lawyer in the law. He decides to file a revenge porn case, Judge, obviously to discredit the witness. Now, this is, and his name, and he showed, I'm sorry, I lost my place. A revenge porn charge against our friend and me and my wife, who I showed the picture to, because if someone sends you a naked picture, you're like, look, I told you, and then you delete it.
Right.
On screen to prove the point that I want nothing to do with these idiots after he sent it. And if someone sent you a naked picture of a woman, wouldn't you show it to your wife and say, hey, baby, I didn't ask for this? Well, now, I don't think this should be revenge porn. Okay, well, now, whether I think this should be revenge porn at all, I want nothing to do with it. But we're apparently going to be subpoenaed to fly out to Minnesota to testify when we're actually more on the side of the guy who sent us the picture, because at least he knows he's an idiot. Then I wrote, how's that for a start? Our friend who's involved with this, nothing. Our friend who's involved with this, a friend of his, and not the Aaron guy, but he's like, he said we should plead the fifth, but there's no way we should plead the fifth and say, because I watch a lot of court TV, because it might, there's nothing we did incriminating, and that's why we can't believe they waste taxpayers' dollars to fly us out there. And I also heard, and then I'll end it, on that LawTube guy, who's a very nice dude, I'm told, and I apologize if I called him a fat whale. Because the power of subpoena ends at the state line, but not in some cases. Apparently, Minnesota is so blue and so ass backwards that it's more important to testify in a revenge porn case for a woman who knowingly sent naked pictures while neglecting to New York, which also thinks the same way. And scene. If you couldn't hear that, you're welcome. Not you, Judge. I know you heard it. I apologize.
We can hear it, Geno. It's fine.
it's almost like a bar association question, for the bar. And the fact of the matter is, let me take it little piece by a little piece, because I tend to be organized. So in the beginning, the subpoena, unless it's a federal case, this doesn't sound like that. The state is limited to the geographical limits of their boundaries. So the subpoena means nothing. What generally happens if you ignore a subpoena, it's ignoring a court order. And so you could be held in contempt. And there's a hearing for that and whatever. But they have no jurisdiction over you to even bring you to that court. And if you don't go to Minnesota, and it doesn't fall under one of the exceptions, which we call the long arm statute, which doesn't apply here, the reality is you could ignore the whole thing. Nobody's going to do anything. Now, I was trying to ask myself the question. I wasn't trying. I was asking myself the question, What kind of lawsuit was it? Is it state, federal, and what was the basis for it?
Oh my God, Keanu, you want to take this one? Because, Judge, I can't. This is, if I could say one thing, then hand it over to my much more eloquent, concise wife. This is insane what the lawsuit is. And what's going on with us is so insanely stupid to us that I didn't bother to tell you what she's about to say. Wow.
Well, let me just add something in the meantime so that you put it in context.
Mhm.
The Fifth Amendment is the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, and it has various components. And if you have any potential of any criminal anything, you have the right to take the Fifth. And what happens if you do that is they can go to court and get an order that requires you to answer or else. And that may or may not happen. It sounds to me that nothing's going to happen in the court system in Minnesota. And when you say they took pictures, is it just pictures of her nude, or is it pictures of her doing things that are visible that might be considered a violation of the law? Now, some of the old laws are very antiquated. Sodomy laws and things of that nature are very antiquated. So it's possible. And you mentioned the use of cocaine. Well, that's against the law in Minnesota, I presume.
Well, Judge,
So
let me make it easy for you.
You're a participant to that, maybe.
Yeah.
It was one picture, as I said, one picture, like I barely remember it. How's that? That I'll say it again, that she posed for in front of him while she knowingly was distracting him because they both knew their spouses were having sex, but she wanted to distract. That's it. It's one stupid picture that I immediately deleted, and it just, the fun we've been having ever since, as you can imagine. So again, circling back to what you're saying, it's like, but we've done nothing wrong. So the last thing I would want to say is because there's nothing that would. Am I right?
This is a nothing burger.
Yes, it is.
Bottom line is you have no real involvement other than being the recipient of information. There may be some argument made by someone else that
Exactly.
as an invasion of the right of privacy, because that's all there is here. There's no
Right. So
not a
that's
defamation. It doesn't seem to fit into any cause of action other than an invasion of the right of privacy. Now, in those cases, the defense is usually consent, and you say she consented to do this. She can't be the participant in the lawsuit as a plaintiff because she consented. Although whether she consented or not is an issue of fact that a jury would normally decide. This is something that we would generally just accept as accurate. If she was in court, she'd say, I never consented, I didn't know, whatever. And the jury decides that, unless there's a waiver of the jury trial, in which event we do that. But the reality here is if you were living in Minnesota and were subject to the subpoena, you could assert certain privileges, including the Fifth Amendment rights and other things. But you're not there. And nothing
right.
to do with
And, and we wouldn't, why would we plead the Fifth? We already told when the officer called us to ask us about it, we just told the truth. Yeah.
Let me ask you something. I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize, honey. Should you ever lie to a cop?
Well, by the way, lying to the police is a criminal offense.
We would never.
Whoa.
Right.
That's no. See, I know that, Judge. And a lot of idiots are like, no, you should have just lied. No, say that again. You broke up. Let me see if my mic works. Lying to the cops is a criminal offense.
You don't have to. You didn't have to. Well, you didn't need to talk to them. When the guy calls you or the gal calls you, say, I have nothing to say. Period. The end. There's nothing they can do to follow that up.
We didn't think of it like that. We just go, we're just going to tell the truth.
I don't break the law, so I didn't realize I could say that. The cop called me 3 times. I'm like, what? And I told them, and at that point, I'm like, whatever you need to know. Because again, Judge, it's one thing if it's my brother or my cousin or my wife. But when it's 4 idiots causing me trouble, I'm like, what do you need to know? Because I want not an inkling of anything. And don't get me wrong, maybe that's why That's obviously why I got dragged into this. But am I wrong to be raised right? After 56 years, to never have had a call with a cop where I'm like, oh, you know what I always do in this situation? No regrets about that. I almost said, is that clear, Judge? I'm sorry, Judge.
Well, first of all, I started my career as a deputy district attorney, as a prosecutor, so I'm familiar with what the cops do. I used to see them every single day. And the reality is, it sounds very strange to me that a cop is calling you in New York. You weren't a participant in anything. Whatever you know is basically hearsay without any exception applying that I could think of. And the reality is, I would have just said, I have no comment. Thank you very much. Good luck. And
I guess you're right. I suppose we could have said that, but Eugene and I just tell the truth. We were just like, yes, it was a picture.
Okay.
It went nowhere else.
Yeah,
Anyway,
right.
but then does that mean we need to be subpoenaed to actually physically, we can't zoom in and say the exact same thing. We have to be subpoenaed on their dime and go to Minnesota for, like you said, a nothing burger. Okay.
Well, the reality here is, Kiana, that they can't do anything to compel you to come to Minnesota, number one.
Right.
And I can tell you, it doesn't sound right to me, having been involved on all sides of these as a prosecutor, as a defense lawyer, and then later on the bench. So I can tell you, there's something missing here. This is not a case where somebody's going to call you in New York to ask you something that somebody else told you or somebody else gave you. I can't even see the sticking of a good cause of action, a criminal cause of action.